Hello and welcome back to RP-0 America. So I haven't recorded in nearly a month. I was on vacation. I was in San Francisco for a bit, but now I'm back, and hopefully, you've had some videos in the last few weeks. But I just need to reacclimate myself to what I have going on. So let's see where we are for tech. So here's where we are. You can take a look. We're not able to stay in orbit for more than a couple of weeks. That's why we're looking to research this. We want more realistic and capable probes. Miniaturization. I don't recall exactly what's in advanced construction, but it sure sounds useful, so I've got it researching. I believe so. The Titan, the next Gemini that I have building here that still remains in the build queue, I have going to finally complete what I can complete for orbital duration comfortably still, which is 2 weeks. And I'm not sure why this hasn't been satisfied yet, so I'll try to keep an eye on that during that. But right now I've got a contract for achieving geostationary orbit. So let's see, launch a vessel, had no people in it. All right, so it's all ready here. And I have designed a craft. I think I even launched a test one, which may still be in orbit. But I have it ready to go, but I'll also show the design. So in the comments, people have suggested that they find the design and construction side just as interesting, and I do find that interesting as well. Just kind of a matter of what I can kind of schedule and fit into the shorter video format I go with. I've been watching some, from the beginning, just from the start, some of Nathan Kell's series, and there's a lot of interesting things I learn in it, like I'll have to use some of his tricks for making better sub-assemblies. I wonder if I'll be able to find my craft in my ridiculous list. Yeah, his videos are much longer than I want to make mine. But still, there's tons of cool stuff in that. He uses a whole different launch technique where he relies on MechJab for all his launch stuff, which is cool. Alright, so let's see if in here, I think it was started with T for Titan. Oh yeah, I updated Realism Overhaul, so all these Raider Nick parts and such are still in, and I haven't deleted them yet. I'm pretty sure it would be under Titan, right? Titan 2 Geostationary, Geostat. Alright, I probably should have renamed it Geostat 2 since I think my test was Geosat 1 already. Alright, as you can see pretty clearly, it's mostly constructed from, actually, I remember talking about this. Jeez, that's the problem. I apologize if I reiterate things. Like it's been literally 3 weeks since I recorded a video, so if I repeat something, hopefully it was short, and I apologize. So if you zoom out, you can see it's pretty much just a Titan 2. I really like to reuse stages. It's just more realistic. Even Realism Overhaul RSS entirely allows you to tweak stages, particularly since most things you'll custom design yourself with procedural parts, so it's effortless to make them slightly bigger, change shapes and stuff. But just for realism's sake, I am using the sub-assemblies and sticking with stages. It's kind of an interesting and realistic design restriction. Though realistically, let's say, over the period of the Titan program, basically reused this stage, just stretched it a bit, and making the tanks slightly longer wasn't a huge retooling thing. We just don't have the cost of that, the realism of that, where you kind of have a tooling to make tanks like this. You can make them shorter like this, or you can make them longer like this, etc. Adapt them for different fuels. We just don't quite have that realistically priced and such. But anyway, I just like to stick with the existing stages I've built and advance along a bit closer to the historical structure than Nathan Kell, though Nathan Kell, exactly as he says in his videos, he's like, this is like a Thor. It's the same diameter as a Thor. He doesn't make it look as close to a Thor as I do, but I'm going for more of recreations than he is. He's going with with many of his early designs are inspired by, whereas I'm trying to be kind of creations of, duplications, recreations of historical craft like this Titan 2. Oven is up to temperature. Alright, so good, it's showing the delta V for these. So it's a lower delta V than, really any of my previous Titans. As you start to add stuff to your Titans, they do get, you do get a lower delta V. And I currently don't have any tech to add. I don't have, so these versions would have a higher thrust a bit to increase this and such, as later Titans. Ooh, weird. Why it's showing me those symbols, I do not know. Interesting. I don't know why the red one won't go away. I don't even know what the red one is. I'll ignore it for now. Okay, so Titan to first stage, Titan to second stage, and this third stage here is Aegina, so it will complete my orbit. I'm using an engine. It's pretty much my Aegina D with very small changes. I'm pretty sure I just copied it in, and I threw on, I think, 4-way thrusters, which my original Aegina D didn't have. I'm using an engine here which has, it's not subject to ullage, which is awesome, and it's got lots of ignitions, so which makes it a very useful and simple craft or stage to be able to place my payload into orbit, since this isn't quite enough delta V, the first and second stage, to get to orbit. So it'll place it into orbit, and then I can do a short coast and then go to geostationary orbit, or a geostationary transfer orbit, sorry, GTO. So with this, and that's about right, that delta V, it's enough to complete orbit and then do an additional burn. I haven't noted down here, it's a rough estimate, but from that parked orbit, once it has placed it in orbit, I will then do about 2,400 meters per second burn to go from the parking orbit to a geostationary transfer. So that should use pretty much all the rest of the delta V in here. And then this is a kick motor. This is an avionics unit, this kind of the thing with the nuclear symbol, which is in FASA. It has avionics, it's priced and massed reasonably, so I used it, even though I've never used it before. I'm a monster. Yeah, I feel like I might have shown a bit about this design in the past, so I apologize if I'm repeating myself. I would like this to not just be visually floating. Is it worth... yeah, sure, why not? Let me try to adjust that and see if that ruins anything. Hopefully it doesn't. Just make it look like it's sitting. So you need to go to the smooth transition. Actually, I want the view where the arrow is down, just so I can visually kind of bump it up. Come on, give me the arrow back. There we go. See, I'd kind of like it to be sitting in a cradle. I just haven't had really any luck in using procedural parts to create little cradles, because realistically I feel like it should have a bit of something to sit in there, but good enough. So I feel like that's a little more sane looking of a design. Realistically, again, there should be kind of something to stabilize this. But anyway, so this is a kick motor, and what this kick motor does is it will deliver most of the delta V I need to go from a geostationary transfer orbit, which is 1 point close to the Earth, 1 point quite far out from Earth, near geostationary altitudes. I'll have to look up the precise altitude of geostationary before I actually carry out this mission, because it's one I don't memorize well. It provides most of that kick, and then this probe will be enough to kind of complete it. It's got a good bit of delta V that allows me to really do the rest of what I need to do. But with this light of a craft in this era, this is about right, and it's similar to what I saw Nathan Kell do as well, where you kind of get to GTO, you do the first 2 or 3 stages, and then use a kick motor to do the complete your getting from geostationary transfer to to a good geostationary orbit, and then this can kind of clean up the mess, because this is solid, and so I need to point it in the right direction and basically pray that I'm that I'm getting close enough to a geostationary orbit that I can clean everything up with what fuel remains in this. And I've got 4 solar panels. They're directional, so I need to keep that in mind for keeping this baby charged. Yeah, sorry I didn't show the full construction of it in this video. Perhaps I have in a past one. My memory even for my own stuff is not very good. But yeah, so that's what the craft comes out like. So let me just save it, leave, and I have one sitting on the pad now. So I'll carry out that launch. Another reason, well, I was away for a while, but also it's just been extremely hot here. I'm in Eastern Canada, and so have to do, even during some of the videos, the previous ones I recorded, I had to do strange things with the house and the AC such that it wouldn't be running all the time while I was making videos. Like pre-chill the house and just accept that it would get unacceptably hot before I finished making a video. And then when I was done, thankfully go and turn the AC back on. So that would really rule out me making long Nathan Kell type videos. So the good news is I'm not trying to hit a very specific spot. So as you may know, a geostationary orbit it basically sits over one spot on the Earth, so that a satellite dish on the Earth that's mounted and pointed in a specific direction can communicate with that satellite without having to move around. So of course, in reality, there's a limited number of those spots. Many of them are already filled, so you don't just have to put the ball in the hole, if you to use a pool type analogy, or billiards. In reality, you have to call your shot very specifically. You have to say, I'm going to take, we're going to put the satellite in this exact spot, which is what sets the launch window for setting something geostationary. It's about as restrictive, possibly more restrictive, than hitting a moving target, because effectively you are hitting a moving target. It's just a virtual target. It's a parking spot, is how I think of it. Just like if you're trying to send something to the ISS, there's a short window in which you can launch and get a close orbit to the ISS for a transfer of your cargo there. Yeah, so see, I have a test craft that I placed about there. Let me just quickly pull up. I was researching. For some reason, I was reading about World War II aircraft carriers. So let me close that wiki tab and just look up geostationary orbit. Oh, it was going to try to complete. There we go. All right, and that tells me circular orbit at 35,786 kilometers. All right, so that's what I'll be aiming for. But first, I just need to get to orbit. And so there's this inclination I'll have to cancel out, because a geostationary orbit is equatorial. It will have no inclination. So this is something I'm going to have to cancel out later on. So I expect, all right, everything looks good. Craft looks nice. All right, ready to take off. All right, so ignite the first stage. Alright, and then it is ready to go, and release clamps. And of course, there's some science there. Okay. So you have to hit a very precise orbit in order to complete this contract, of course, which makes sense. To sit close enough to an exact spot in the sky is a phenomenally precise orbit that you're trying to place your craft into. So let me just scroll down in here. Oh, right. Something I learned in a previous Nathan Kell video, which is awesome, is you can collapse those. I can't believe I hadn't noticed that earlier. There we go. So these are the details of what I'm trying to hit. Okay, so start pitching a little bit. I'm pitching a little bit later than I normally would with a Titan II launch, just because we started with such a low thrust-to-weight ratio. All right. About half of the speed of sound. All right, and we will commit to the prograde now. Oh, it's a pretty basic geostationary satellite I placed in here. It's going to end up being a fairly small payload, pretty much the minimum that I can accomplish the mission with, just because at this point in the history of the series, we have launchers that are capable of doing these new, these kind of first-time, brand-new, amazing operations, but they're not powerful or cheap enough to be able to send a lot of mass to do those things. You can do a flyby of the moon, but with like a small payload. We can put something in geostationary, but not a huge satellite like the satellites that are placed in geostationary orbit nowadays, like by the Falcon 9 or by the Proton, are very, very heavy. They're like, is the weight of a bus or something like that. And they've had a lot of experience in designing those payloads. In practice, rather than having a solid kick motor like this, I believe many of the satellites now placed in geostationary orbit just have that final motor to complete the orbit built into the satellite, rather than it being a separate component. So this is going to be a pretty small payload up to geostationary orbit. And I've also been, during this time of inactivity, I also did a quick test because I had a realization right before I left for San Francisco. I was trying to think of clever ways to do like an on-orbit construction, do multi-launch to send a Gemini past the moon. And then I realized that I might actually be able to just use liquid hydrogen and liquid oxygen to send something past the moon. Basically, use a Saturn 1. And that seemed to work in a quick test I had done, which is awesome. So that might be a near-term upcoming video in this series as well, so look forward to that. It will be a craft that can actually throw Gemini on a close flyby and free return of the moon, which I think is pretty cool. It wasn't an objective that was set as a goal in the original moon program, but I feel like it's one that kind of could or should have been made. Oh, I should have hot staged that, but thankfully our fuel didn't destabilize. Dump the first stage, and we're approaching high enough. Because, in the major landmarks to the moon, like some of them require really high lift capacity rockets, like massive increases in technological ability, launch mass ability. All right, and let's dump that and try to keep the camera so that, oh, interesting. I don't remember if I saved it that way or maybe I did an adjustment, but it does look like this craft I already had built is sitting nicely, which is awesome. Okay. So to actually place a payload into the orbit of the moon, like a crewed payload into the orbit of the moon, is a huge mass budget. Like it's you have to be able to throw something like 15 to 30 tons. Like I know that's a huge range, but it depends on how many people you send, and exactly how efficient you are. Lots and lots of things. Like I think I just checked out a recent Nathan Kell video, although I'm pretty sure it was recent, where his plan, he has a craft that is capable with just a single launcher of sending a payload, a craft that can put itself in a crewed payload. It can place itself into orbit of the moon, and then it can also send itself back. And that's a really big payload. That's about 15 tons, I think, at closest approach to the moon, which is also the same. So that's basically 15 tons TLI. Whereas a Saturn 1 cannot do anywhere near that, but like at least as an early objective of crewed exploration of the solar system, being able to do a flyby of the moon is a substantial portion, in my opinion, of being able to do an orbit of the moon. You can get a lot of a substantial amount of the same science, at least, or maybe in a kind of a Russian thinking way, it's a really good PR coup. You're the first to be able to send people past the influence of out of escape Earth's gravity well, able to put it in, or at least escape Earth's gravity well enough to put it more in the influence of another body in this, the moon versus the Earth. It's getting, once you're doing a flyby of the moon, you're close enough to the moon that the moon is the dominant gravitational force on your spacecraft rather than the Earth. It would give you the kind of bonus points of being the highest of any people ever, you're the furthest away from Earth, all kinds of kind of Soviet benchmark-esque PR coups that I think they could have achieved. If the Americans hadn't been so uncertain when in the early 60s, when they kind of quickly put together the list, what are the things we could do that we know that we could accomplish faster than the Russians if we put enough money into it. So things on that list, I believe, were to put a person into orbit, kind of duration, like put a person in orbit for a long time, like 2 weeks or a month or something like that. Plenty of other things were put on that list, but ultimately they went with, one other thing was to, get a man on Mars, which at that point I think would have been overkill to start planning to put a man on Mars before the Americans had really, put more than a couple of people into orbit. Maybe just one person. I keep forgetting the precise day where they made that decision and made that announcement. Anyway, I just need to make sure. At this point, I just need to get into orbit. So I don't need to spend too much of my brain capacity on paying attention to this, so I can kind of talk in all crazy depth. So I just want to push this time out a bit because the next stage is going to have a much lower thrust to weight ratio. Let's see if I can quickly get to this before the engine burns out. There we go. So now we've got a kind of a minute of leeway, a little less. So we just separate and then run that engine. So it kind of clips through during that, unfortunately. I should probably set it to push it away a bit harder so you don't see that it doesn't end up clipping that way. Alright, so go to 15 degrees again. Actually, it looks like I can do less than 15 degrees because this is a way lower thrust to weight ratio than that last stage had at the end, but it's still high enough that, and we're close-ish enough, we're a little more than a kilometer per second away. So anyway, let me get back to my original topic before we complete orbit. Let's see. So the final mission they went with was putting a man on the moon, returning him safely to Earth. But they also could have, I think with substantial confidence, said that they would be able to fly a person by the moon first. And they could have potentially accomplished it the way that I'm going to accomplish it, like as early as maybe, like historically they might have been able to do that by like 66 or 67. kind of giving them 3 more years of money and planning to, you know, go on to the next potential missions in space. Or, you know, by setting a less ambitious mission like that, you could also argue that America would have just said, yeah, we accomplished that, we did beat the Russians, that was the symbol we set, you know, we called our shot 6, 7 plus years out, and then accomplished that. And then they may have lost interest in space earlier, or started putting less money into space earlier, for all we know. But anyway, that's kind of what I'm aiming for. Not paying less attention to space earlier on in American history, but accomplishing a more straightforward, lower cost goal with my space program, and then going to take a bit of time to plan our next move. Again, kind of sort out the exactly what mode do we want to use to land on the moon, because right now we don't have the F1 engine. We're still a number of technologies away from the F1 engine, which was used on the Saturn V, which is in practice what we would need for heavy throw missions for anything. Even kind of what I was considering, I'm pretty sure is what I'd agreed to as probably the best idea for this playthrough of like a Saturn 3B or something like that, where rather than a full Saturn V where it has 5 F1 engines in the first stage, but instead a first stage that has 2 or 3 F1 engines, which, you know, makes it much more powerful than even the Saturn 1 I have, the Saturn IB, or Saturn 1B that I can develop shortly. Oh, we're approaching orbit. But still a very, very capable medium lift launcher. I'd have to look at the numbers. Maybe it's similar to most similar to the Russian Proton, but still a bit more capable. Maybe like a similar mass to the Russian Proton, but because it uses liquid hydrogen in the upper stage, it would be more capable for throwing things at the moon. And I think that's vaguely similar to what Nathan Kell built as well for his super cool. Highly endorse looking at his series if you haven't yet. His mission plan, it looked to me, if he hasn't changed or if I'm not incorrect, is to kind of do a dual launch where one craft sends what I believe he recently tested was sending a crewed capsule into orbit of the moon, and then another launcher would send basically the lunar lander module, which would have to slow itself into lunar orbit, and then would have to dock with the crewed part and then bring people down to the surface. So kind of 2 launches in order to achieve lunar landing. And that's pretty cool. You know, I might do something similar. I would probably use 2 different rockets instead. Okay, so this is handy data that I clearly pulled up for a good reason. Rather than using 2 of the same launcher, which I'm not sure if Nathan Kell is planning to use, I'd maybe use the heavier one to like place people into orbit of the moon, and then maybe use something smaller like a Titan Centaur or something like that to maybe bring a small lunar lander, or maybe do Earth orbit construction where I put a large craft into Earth orbit and then another thing that's going to throw it towards the moon. There's all kinds of cool ways to break up a lunar mission into multiple launches, and I'm still trying to sort out which one I think is the neatest, because I really like doing Earth orbit construction, as I'm sure I've mentioned plenty of times. So let's look at the geostationary information. Actually, let me first take a look at length of video. Not bad, 23 minutes in the moment, so I can probably feel like I still have enough time to at least plan our next burn. So just kind of see what state we're currently in and carry out our next burn. So here's a number that's important. So the AN, DN, ascending node, descending node with respect to a geostationary orbit. It doesn't matter which of these you aim for, just so you know, from launching from Florida, you're kind of starting to come down. Gravity is pulling you towards the equator. And what this is telling me is 17 minutes from now, I will be over the equator, which is where I want to center my burn in practice. So I just need to find a point in time which matches that. Probably about, no, not there. Anyway, let me just keep node time in blah, blah, blah. Let me match those. 46, yeah, good enough. That's close enough for me. All right, so now I need to set up this burn. So I want it to happen at this time because I want the point of the burn as well as, so this will become my periapsis, other than like current asymmetries in my orbit. It's not perfectly circular. This will become my periapsis, or very close to my periapsis, and therefore the other point, which I'm creating further out, my new apoapsis, which I also want to be over the equator. So that's why I'm setting this first burn up over the equator, is so that that point is also over the equator, because pretty close to that apoapsis that I create is going to be where I do my second burn. And ultimately, to end up in an orbit that is over the equator at all times, the point at which you do your burn, like your final burn, when you're done with everything, that point has to be over the equator, right? This is kind of a logic. Like the point where you do your burn, if it's kind of a recurring orbit like this, right? And if I do this burn and I'm going to go out there, come back, go out there, come back, I'm creating this recurring orbit that I will go through. So that point has to be one of the points I'm happy with passing through. Even if I want to pass through it in a different plane, I want to pass through it over the equator, has to be a point over the equator that I'm happy coming back to. Because no matter how I burn could burn to slow down, I could do all kinds of, to speed up, to change my plane in other ways, right, to make it kind of polar. Either way, no matter what I do, that point where I do the burn is a point I'm going to be coming back through. That's how I think about it. All right, so anyway, I want this to be out and about as the wiki page I pulled up, and oh weird, I thought I shrank those. Oh, maybe they unshrink when you close it and open it again. Oops. There we go. So 35,700. That's pretty close to what I actually want. It's actually 35,786 that I'm aiming for. So that's exactly what I want that to be. Now it would be nice if I could have this carried out by MechJeb. So perhaps it's a good idea that I'm planning to set up this burn, this video, and then next video I'll carry it out and do the rest of the geostationary mission. Because if I want to give MechJeb a shot to carry out this and kind of precisely hit this orbit, then I want to be able to load if it screws up. And so doing a save kind of naturally fits. So that's close-ish. It's within 10 kilometers of what I actually want, and I could probably tweak things to get closer, but that's good enough for now. Because ideally I just have to do the one burn here, be done, do a burn there, be done, and be in geostationary orbit. But of course it's not all that clean. There will be small corrections that I'll have to carry out as well. So right now I've got a new crew, or a new mission, it's uncrewed, etc. So I have a burn set up. So this will be to go from my parking orbit after this coast. So I just watched a video of, for example, Falcon 9 doing a similar mission to this yesterday or the day before that. Kudos to them on their continuing string of landing successes. So they did the same thing here. They get into a parking orbit here for a short period of time, and then after a short period of time, you light this engine again to place yourself, go from the low Earth parking orbit, do the next burn at the right precise point to be able to turn the low parking orbit to a geostationary transfer orbit. And that's what we plan to do. So I'm going to point myself, oh, hold on, I do not want to waste fuel on that. So I used to have a good habit of freezing these tanks out. I want to just make sure there's no fuel in that center core. No fuel, just power. Okay. I used to have a good habit of locking those in the craft file, but of course I haven't. I've forgotten that habit. Okay, so I'm just going to point myself in the right direction here before I save and end this video. In the next video, we will complete this. So we will go from this parking orbit to geostationary transfer orbit, or GTO, using pretty much most of the remains of this fuel, and then probably dump this transfer stage. And then we will do the burn to, get really close to geostationary orbit, hopefully with this solid. Maybe I'll hold on to this just so I can spin up before I use that solid. That actually makes more sense. Because the solid can't gimbal, I can't really control it or anything, so if I'm spinning, if I'm slightly off of the precise axis, I will kind of lose control of the craft. It will process around my targeted orbit. Alright, so that looks pretty good. Pretty well targeted, so just SAS and these should shift very gradually, try to hold me at this point. Alright, it looks happy. So thanks for watching RP-0 America. Thanks for watching. Goodbye.